Om Shanti. Did everybody here attend the Murli this morning? Did anybody not? Who was unable to be at the Murli this morning? So of course all of you have heard exactly what is necessary in order to be bodiless, so you don't need this class. But in case you missed it, and the great thing about the Murli is that it's easy to miss what's really going on. I actually brought another one. And the particular part of the Murli that I would like to share with you again to remind you of was the blessing. Do you remember what the blessing was about? Who remembers what the blessing was about? It's funny that, the Murli, we always forget what's in the Murli. There are some hands that went up. What was in the blessing? You can shout it out. I won't be able to hear you. The detached observer, yes. Companion, that's exactly it. That's the essence. All you have to do is be a detached observer and make sure that you keep the right company. And Baba tells us that the right company is with him. And there's a reason why he's such good company, which we probably don't have time to get into today, because I think I'm only going to speak with you for half an hour, and then we are going to get into the experience of the bodiless stage, which I personally think is a problem. Because, as you know, there are a number of different stages available to us. Do you know what the different stages are that are available to us? So we have the bodiless stage, you know that. What's another stage that's available? The angelic stage. And the seed stage. Any other stages? Where? You have to shout. The deity stage. That's next. Yes, but here right now we have 3 available stages that we play around with, really, don't we? You know, the seed stage. Have you done the seed stage in this bhati yet? No, that's next, is it? And the angelic stage? Of course, to have the angelic stage, what do you have to be to have the angelic stage? An angel? Light. And the bodiless stage really is a stage for Brahmins to practice. Yeah? And when do you think you should practice the bodiless stage? In service? Basically all the time. I think that's what you meant to say. Yeah. And the seed stage, should you practice the seed stage all the time? The answer is no. Because the seed stage, as you may or may not find out in this bhati, is the stage of absolute stillness. And it's jolly difficult to be in the seed stage and walk and talk and rock and roll. Yeah? But it is possible to be in the bodiless stage and to walk and talk and rock and roll. Right? Now, not the other way around. No, the bodiless stage is really a stage, in my opinion, of when we are really in action. Now, we spend a lot of our time, and I'm sure you've spent a lot of your time in this bhati, sitting here in quietude, in quietness, yeah? Thinking, feeling, experiencing, and really keeping, yes, the companionship of each other, but also the companionship of God. And by keeping the company of God, somehow we are able to take on power and some of His qualities. I've been a BK for quite a number of years, and in a sense, what I've been doing over these many years is just kind of practicing to be a BK. And I'm not exactly sure whether I've got it right or not. But one of the insights that I have had around the practice of meditation is that when we are meditating, and everyone here has meditated, right? Yes? But when we are meditating, you know, let me show you what meditation looks like, just in case you don't know. It looks like this. Yeah? I sit quietly, and I focus on a particular aspect that I want to meditate on. But you see, I don't think that when we're meditating that we're actually meditating. And I think it's probably a mistake to feel as though when we're meditating formally that we're meditating. The way I look at it is that when I sit in meditation formally, that is to say at Amrit Vela, 7:30, before class, traffic control, etc., all these times, whether a short period or a long period, this actually is not meditation. And so you might be thinking to yourself, what's he talking about? What is it if it isn't meditation? Well, I'd like to put this thought into your head, that time in which you are ostensibly in meditation is actually a time when you are practicing meditation. That is to say, you are practicing to come into a consciousness that you hope to have every moment of your life. So that actually real meditation is the consciousness you have all the time. Yeah? And there's a subtle but important difference. So when we're sitting formally in meditation, we're actually practicing getting into a consciousness that we hope to hold and be so used to getting into and being in that we somehow forget to leave that consciousness when we leave the room and go out and have our lunch and walk and talk and rock and roll. Yeah? And that consciousness, that normal consciousness that we try to get into when we're in this kind of formal meditation, is most normally what we call the bodiless stage. This is when we try and become soul conscious. Yeah? And the blessing today tells you everything you need to know about success in becoming soul conscious. Would you like me to read it to you again? I brought it specially. I had to negotiate downstairs in the global office to take this piece of... Do you know how difficult it is to take this piece of paper out of global office? So I'm going to read it to you because we might as well not waste the deal that I made. So the blessing is, may you be full of all powers and become free from all bondages. Now there's secrets in that little piece there. Full of all powers and free from all bondages. The implication there is that may you have a good life. You have the power to live and the freedom to live. So power and freedom. That is to say, Baba is saying, have a good life. I am teaching you to live fully and naturally. And how? With the awareness of being a companion and a detached observer. In other words, I'm going to hang out with the right kind of person, in this case, God Himself, and be in a state of mind that allows me to experience myself as I really am. And then Baba goes on to get into the detail of these secrets in order to be full of all powers and free from all dependence. In other words, to live fully. Always remember two things, detached observer and companion. Through this, you will easily become free from all bondages. When you have the company of the Almighty Authority Father, you automatically attain all powers. This is very strange. You just have to hang out with God. That's what it means, keep the company of the Almighty Father. Another way of saying it in modern speak is hang out with God. Yeah? And automatically you will become full of all powers. This is a very strange thing. All we have to do is hang out with God and we'll automatically become... We don't actually have to do anything. Our effort is to hang out with God. It's not to become some perfect prune, I don't know what. Yeah? You understand what I'm saying? Yeah? So anyway, Baba goes on. By moving along as a detached observer, you will not become trapped, because there's all kinds of funny business going on. The whole of life is all about trapping you. Simply carry out your task, that is to say, live your life, for name's sake, while in that body, and become a detached observer. Especially increase this practice. So I was very interested this morning when I was listening to the Murali, and this was said in the blessing, because this really is the essence of the implications of what it takes and what it means to be in the bodiless stage. So the question is, how do we get into the bodiless stage? We get into the bodiless stage by being the detached observer. And how do we do that? Well, it's very tricky. It's one of the most difficult things we can do. You know, all of you sitting here have had 84 births, right? Has anyone here had less than 84 births? Right. So the first 20 of them, everything was kind of fine, right? And then the next lot, up until the 84th, things went a little wrong. But you did well, and you've wound up here after all, yeah? But the problem on the way is that all of us, all of you, me too, have become body conscious, yeah? And we are sort of living under what you could call the illusion of being a body and not being a soul. And do you remember the first lesson that you were ever taught in Raj Yoga? Do you remember what it was about? I can hear some. Do I hear the soul? Yes, it was the lesson of the soul. And what did you learn? You learned that you're a soul and not a body. Yeah? And they played word games on you. They tricked you and they said, do you have a soul? Do you remember somebody like me would sit up in class and say, do you have a soul? And you'd say, yes, I have a soul. And then we'd say, no, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. You remember that one? And so you were taught that you're a little tiny sparkle sitting behind the eyes. And you were taught to look out through these eyes. And you were taught to remember that you are this body, and that you use this body, and that when you are soul conscious, you are only aware of your qualities of a soul, and you are able to be detached and float through life in a fantastic way. I personally think, and you've got to understand, God is, there's a difference between God grabbing us and turning us the right way round and turning us into Brahmins and getting us into the golden age, and one of the great avatar souls, you know, the four great ones that came to the earth, Abraham, Buddha, Christ, and Muhammad, yeah, you know, and they started their religions. The difference between God and them is that they were working with new material. In other words, any soul popping in to existence on this earthly plane and bumping up against, say, for instance, the Christ soul. When the Christ started nattering, blathering on to him about these ideas, the soul that was listening was fully clean and powerful, no baggage. And you may have noticed there were a lot of souls on earth who were pretty irritated by what the Christ said, and eventually they strung him up. So they weren't happy. So all these souls that started new religions were working with new material. God's job is much, 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 much more difficult. Because I don't know whether you know this about yourself, but you definitely at this period of the cycle of time are what we call used goods. Think about it. We are totally upside down. Not only is our mind, intellect and sanskaras fully formed in the Kali Yuga image, but our chit, which I think something Dadi has been speaking to you about a few days ago, that is to say what I would consider to be our super subconscious, really the very essence of what we believe to be ourselves. Our heart is fully upside down now. And so God has to start working with this material. And in order to start working with this material, he has to speak to us in our own language. Because remember, we, coming off the end of many, many births of being upside down, are totally convinced that black is white and that white is black, and that up is down and that down is up, yeah? And so where does Shiv Baba begin? He begins by telling you you're a soul and that you have a body. And here I would like to insert, if you wouldn't mind, a very small point, because we do not have a lot of time to really investigate this too far. And I only want to tell you what I'm going to tell you, not because I want you to believe it, but because I would like to encourage you to experiment with this idea. And the time to experiment with it would be the next hour when we have our sitting meditation. Here's the idea. You were told in your first lesson that you are a soul and that you have a body. And at other times in your investigations of the soul, you've heard the soul described as the traveler. Yeah? And what you thought was, yeah, okay, I, the soul, have taken on many different bodies, and I have traveled through space and time with these different bodies. And right now I've wound up in this, my last birth, and I have this body which may or may not work very well, according to my karma. And in soul consciousness, I recognize that I use this body. Well, here is the idea that I would like to share with you that is a little different from the idea that I am a soul, a tiny point, sitting in the cockpit behind my eyes, operating this body like it's some kind of jumbo jet or robot. I would like to share with you the idea that, in a sense, we don't have a body at all. We've been told that I am a soul and I have a body. But in a sense, we don't have a body. And the sense that I would like to draw your attention to now, and you can start by just thinking of this big room and our company. And at the moment, as you're sitting there in your seat, you are experiencing me, you're experiencing the butterflies, the three candles, the table, the chair, me, the picture of Brahma Baba and the world, and you're aware of yourself in this big room. And if you just draw your attention to the physical nature of your existence, you'll see that there are other parts of your body that are reassuring you that you're here. And you can, right now, if you like, just draw your attention to your back and actually the feeling that you have of your back against your chair. And you might also be able to feel your feet on the ground and your arms on the arms of your chair. And as you breathe in, you can probably feel the air coming through your nostrils and into your lungs. And if you have a headache, which I don't at the moment, I have to tell you, but sometimes I do, you'll be able to feel that. And whatever else, you'll be able to feel. So I think you understand that. And if you take all of this material, the feeling on your back, feet on the floor, sound of my voice in your ears, all the visual stimuli that you're getting, you could say that you could wrap that up into a single word. And that word is a word that we use a lot in BK code, and that word we use is the scene in the drama. So you are right now experiencing a scene in the drama. And it's very easy for you to experience this scene in the drama as long as it's outside of your body. So for instance, I am part of the scene in your drama right now. And one of the things Baba tells us that we have to do is to forget our bodies, especially towards the end. And the thing that I would like to draw to your attention now, as you're thinking in these terms, is that all those feelings, the little tiny feelings in your back, on your arms, if you can feel any itches on your skin, or your hand on your face, or the feeling of your hair on your head. I don't know whether you can feel your hair on your head. At the moment I can feel the hair on my head. This is also critically part of the scene. So this means that your body is part of the scene in the drama. Yeah? Now, you know that when you walk into this big room, this big hall, and you say, okay, I'm now in the scene of the drama in which I am acting out my part in this great big room, and we call it now. But what I would like to draw to your attention is that ever since you were a very, very, very young child, in fact, ever since you were born, the moment that you were born, you have been experiencing scenes in the drama in which the molecules and atoms, and that's what scenes in the drama are made up of, by the way, in which the molecules and atoms were of what you have come to call your own body. But actually, you could think in terms that the soul, just like the soul is visiting the molecules and atoms of this great big room, the soul on a moment-by-moment basis has been visiting the molecules and atoms of what you have come to call your own body. Although if you only had one visit for 1/2 second and then went on somewhere else, you wouldn't have fallen into that trap. Yeah? And that this itself is the grand illusion of what Baba calls body consciousness. Now, the best metaphor that I have ever come across that describes this illusion is the metaphor of the train in the station next to the other train. Now, sometimes I've given this story, this lecture, in places where they don't have trains, and I know that in Iceland they don't have trains. So when you try to tell this metaphor in Iceland, nobody knows what you're talking about. Does everybody in the audience today have the experience of sitting in a train, in a station, next to another train? Does everyone have that experience? Anyone not? Yeah? Now, remember the time, and I'm sure we've all had this experience, of sitting in a train, in a station, next to another train, and what happens is that the other train moves. Yeah? And for a second or two, you are convinced that you are moving in the opposite direction. Have you had that experience? Just nod if you have. Huh? It's a very real experience. Yeah? Have you had that experience? Yeah? It's amazing how real that experience is. And even when we know that it's impossible, just for a second or two, it just feels that way. Now, we call that an illusion. But what I'd like to bring to your attention is that when we say illusion, we do not mean that it is not there. What we mean is that we just don't get what's going on. That's what illusion means. So in the train and in the station experience, we are convinced that we're going the other way. And then through a process, we normalize ourselves and we get it and everything goes back to normal. But for that half second, we're convinced. Now this metaphor is very helpful for me because I imagine that in a sense, what's happened to us for 2,500 years, and probably actually even before that, we have been in the train in the station experience, and we have become fully convinced that we're actually going the other way. And all that's happening now in the confluence age is that God has turned up in our carriage, and basically he's saying, excuse me, but the other train's moving, by the way. And what that does is turn everything upside down. Everything for the last 2,500 years that we have come to know and believe and understand and been taught many times in our youth, in our various bodies that we've taken, we've come to become fully believe, we've now come to fully believe that everything is the opposite way around. And God has come now and told us all sorts of things that are completely upside down. And the first is that we are not a body, we are a soul. And it's very easy to think of ourselves as a tiny light behind the eyes and that we're this driver of this car. No problem, it's a good metaphor to start with. But if we really want to get into soul consciousness, actually, we have to start beginning to see ourselves as the traveler, the shimmer that is shooting through space and matter to create time. We are the creators, and it's our journey that creates all the events, and that every possibility is always there. But it comes into life, into action, when we, the soul, pass through it. This, in my experience, if I can begin to see myself in this way, then all sorts of things like attachment and bondage naturally, rationally, just fall away. So it's no longer an effort to be detached and to not have bondage, but it now, in this new consciousness, real soul consciousness, it now makes sense to be detached and to be free. So this, it's now 11:34, I'm 4 minutes late. This is an idea that I invite you to play with in your own mind as we sit for the next hour in the practice of becoming truly bodiless. Om Shanti.